Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. So this is a pretty exciting edition. We are 2 days into Pro Tour Eldritch Moon at the time of this recording. Now typically on Saturday here in the United States we would only be 1 day through, but because it's taking place in Australia, they've already cut to the top 8, and tonight the top 8 play will begin. So that's actually pretty awesome. It gives us a really good picture of what Standard's going to look like going forward, and the market has already begun reacting to that. So you're going to see that in just a few moments. Also, Modern, there's a few interesting tidbits in there, and Legacy continues to be an area where the reserve list cards are incredibly strong. So let's go ahead and jump into Standard, and we're going to look at the top 5 cards that lost value this week. Coming in number 5 is Secure the Wastes. This is down 52 cents to $4.94. Now this is still seeing some play in Standard. However, it is getting close to being rotated out and is not seeing as much play as it once was. Look at those two pieces together and you're going to notice this card will probably continue to drop over the next few weeks. Next we have Relentless Dead. This was down 54 cents to 12. Now this was really starting to go up in value during the reveal of Eldritch Moon. A lot of players were anticipating a strong showing from the zombie deck. Now the zombie deck is out there. It definitely saw play this weekend at the Pro Tour, but it hasn't emerged as one of the top tier decks, at least not at this point. And because of that, I think Relentless Dead is going to start its trend back down. This was about a $4 or $5 card before it got up to the $12, $15 range. Now I think it's going to go back down to maybe the $5 to $8 range over the next few weeks. Number 3 is Nahari the Harbinger. She's down 93 cents to $22.99. Now she again is seeing play, just not as much as she was seeing prior to the change in the metagame. She is still seeing a fair amount of modern play though, and even a little bit of legacy play. So I do think this is a good long-term investment. Keep an eye on this card. If she dips below $20, might not be bad to think about picking up some copies of her as a long-term investment, especially if you're interested in the future of perhaps playing her in a different format. Coming in number 2 is Gazella the Broken Blade, losing $1.42 to $16.69. Now here's a very good example of a card that was maybe a little bit overpriced during the pre-release time and into the first couple weeks of the release, mostly because when we first saw this card, the metagame was all about decks like mono white and green white tokens, and this card just seemed like it would fit very well in that type of meta. Well, the meta's changed quite a bit now that Eldritch Moon has actually been released, and yes, this card is seeing play, and the first couple weeks, especially the Star City Open, did have a pretty decent showing, but not as much at the Pro Tour. Now, it's still out there. Don't count this card out yet, but I do think it's going to perhaps come down a little more if it doesn't get a foothold in the current meta soon. Coming in number 1 is Tamiyo Field Researcher, down $1.48 to $16.07. Tamiyo's actually seeing a lot of play, but it's just play out of the sideboards, and obviously this isn't a card you need a 4 of or anything like that. Bank Company decks, though, are doing a lot of work with her from the sideboard, and I think any Bank Company decks that weren't running her in the sideboard up until this weekend will probably start running her in the sideboard. It has done very well in the Bank Company deck that has gotten the airtime, which was LSV's deck. Interesting note about Bank Company as well. The deck was very, very powerful the first couple weeks in Star City Games Opens. It was a deck that had a huge showing at the Pro Tour. In fact, it was like 17% or 20% of the field when the Pro Tour started. But really, it didn't perform nearly as well as it seemed to at the Star City Games Open. Now, having said that, LSV was able to have a lot of success with it, and because of that, I think it will still catch the attention of a lot of players, and it's still going to show up in a lot of Friday Night Magics, and Tamiyo is going to be a big part of that. Alright, so let's get to the big news, the cards that have gained value this week. Now, these are cards that had the biggest and most influential showing at the Pro Tour. Coming in number 5 is Grimflayer, up $2.39 to $10.38. So Delirium decks, definitely a thing, and I said this back when this card was originally previewed. You take a 2-drop and you put this much upside on it, guess what? It's going to be a good card. I mean, look at Voice of Resurgence. As long as it can find a foothold, this will be very popular. It's definitely finding its foothold. Keep an eye on this one. Coming in number 4 is Kozilek's Return. It's up 488 to 1060. So why now is Kozilek's Return increasing so quickly? Well, it turns out this combos really well with Emrakul. So you get this in your graveyard once you get Emrakul out, and Emrakul very, very castable considering that Delirium decks are a thing and Ramp decks are a thing. This just plays so well with that card. Number 3, Ishkana Graft Widow, up 628 to 1359. So I mentioned before, Delirium is definitely a thing. This card had a coming out party, I guess, really at Star City Games Open that first week. I think a lot of players didn't see this one coming. It was in these Delirium decks. It didn't go away in week 2, and guess what? It's still there now that we're at the Pro Tour. Liliana the Last Hope, up 1049 to 4723. At this point, she's the most valuable and maybe the most popular card in Eldritch Moon. This card is, again, seeing lots and lots of play in Delirium style decks. This card can be ultimated. It's definitely a strategy. We've seen it on camera a couple times this weekend during the Pro Tour. It is happening, and even if it doesn't happen for 3 mana, she's still doing a ton of work. Now, I do think she's spiking really hard right now due to the attention she's getting from the Pro Tour. This isn't a Jace Vryn's Prodigy when it comes to value. Thank goodness, because that was ridiculous. But Jace Vryn's Prodigy, you have to remember, that was a card that was a blue and a 1. And at the time in the meta when it was really spiking hard, it was being splashed into every deck, and 4 copies were wanted by every deck. That's not the case with Liliana, so I don't think she's going to maintain these levels of $50, $60 value. I think that once the Pro Tour subsides and everybody kind of gets out there, grabs their copies, she'll start to come down again. So be a little bit careful what you pay for this card if you're looking to pick her up. Right now, I think a lot of people are scrambling to put together decks for their Friday Night Magic over the next few weeks based off what they've been seeing at the Pro Tour. Coming in number 1, another card that spiked really hard, Emrakul the Promised End, up $18.44 to $31.46. Just about a week ago, I think this was like a $12 card. A lot of people thought, okay, it's going to show up a little bit fringe. It was in Star City Games Open decks, but I don't know if the player base really figured out just how good this card was going to be yet. The Pro Tour has really showcased what this card can do. Again, much like Liliana, this might be a little bit inflated right now just due to the fact that it has had such a great showing, and a lot of people are trying to pick up their copies of it very quickly. So keep an eye on this one. It's obviously not going to continue to spike this hard. It may start to come down over the coming weeks. But again, if you need to pick it up, you kind of need to pick it up. If not, you might be able to wait a little bit. All right, top 5 Modern cards that have lost a value this week. So as we get into Modern, you're going to notice it's a little more stable than what we've just been looking at in Standard, but it is starting to heat up a little bit. Coming in number 5 was Nimbus Maze, down $2.05 to $26.28. Now, this was the target of a buyout a couple weeks ago. It spiked pretty hard. Since then, it has been coming down. So I did say that I don't really think it's going to go down to where it was prior to the spike. It doesn't appear like that's happening, but at least it is coming down. It's now at least getting closer to the $25 mark. Again, if you want to pick this card up, I would wait a little longer. Number 4 is Doubling Season from Ravnica. This is down $2.10 to $41.32. Basically just normal stabilization. Number 3 is River of Tears, down $2.31 to $16. Again, this appeared to be the victim of a mini buyout a week or two ago, and it's already starting to come down. I think what you have to remember about some of these cards are, okay, yes, some of the Future Sight lands are very, very expensive. Horizon Canopy, Grove of the Burn Willows, but it doesn't necessarily mean all of them are going to get to that point. It just depends on how often they're played in different formats. River of Tears just doesn't see as much play and isn't as sought after as a Horizon Canopy, so it stands to reason that even if you try to manipulate the market, you're not going to have another huge card on your hands. I think this is a good example of that. Now, this has gone up a lot from where it was a few weeks ago, but it is starting to come down already, and I just can't imagine it holding a whole lot of value considering it sees relatively limited amount of play. Next, we have Counterbalance, down $3.61 to $21.31. This one's kind of funny because we've been talking about it for the last 2 or 3 weeks. During the time period when the changes to the format were about to be announced, a lot of players thought Counterbalance potentially could be banned due to its dominance in Legacy and the Miracles deck. However, that didn't happen, nor did its partner Sensei's Divining Top get banned, so a lot of people felt a little more comfortable. They went out and purchased counterbalances, and now that trend is starting to wane, so it's starting to go back down. So you're just seeing some normal stabilization here. This card is probably more like a $15, $18 card than it is a $20 card, so be careful, don't overpay for it. Coming in number 1 is Tarmogoyf. And Tarmogoyf, at this point, this is starting to be a real big trend of this card declining in value. Future Sight version down $4.11 to $161.99, where the original Modern Masters is down $5.20 to $135.78. This is very interesting. Now, Tarmogoyf, yes, still seeing play. As a matter of fact, the Jund deck is actually probably more prevalent in Modern recently than it has been in a while. But at the same time, I think this card has been living on reputation for a really long time. I think the Legacy and Modern players that play Jund or play Zoo that want this card, I think they kind of have it. And I think a lot of the value of this card has lived on the fact that Tarmogoyf has been an iconic card, and players have maybe been picking it up because they wanted it in their collection more than anything, even more so than they want to play it. It's not always a fantastic card for Commander or Cube, but it is definitely good in certain places. So I do think this drop really is a long time coming. I just felt like Tarmogoyf for a long time has been valued a lot higher than it should have been. Whenever it gets released in Modern Masters, it garners a lot of attention. It's a card people just want to own. But right now, it's coming down. The only thing you do have to be careful of, though, if it comes down too low, it could be the target of a buyout, and that would be pretty crazy. So keep an eye on this. If you are in the market to pick up Tarmogoyfs, there's a chance that maybe within the next couple months or so, you might be able to get a much more fair price. All right, let's look at what has gained value this week in Modern. Coming in number 5 is Greater Gargadon, and this is the Modern Masters version, up 89 cents to $4.98. This card is seeing a little bit of play in the Modern Nahiri deck as well as the Dredge deck, and the Dredge deck actually is really taking off right now in Modern. Coming in number 4 is Damnation, up 94 cents to $66.22. Normal stabilization here. This card has just been living around the $65 range for quite some time, and yeah, it's just the card that refuses to be reprinted. Number 3, we have Bridge from Below, up $1.13 to $10.78. This is the Future Sight version, and like I mentioned previously, Dredge is definitely gaining momentum in Modern right now. Speaking of Dredge, number 2, Dagmar Salvage, up $1.65 to $3.84. And finally, Mishra's Bauble, up $14.34 to $32.80. Now, the Suicide Zoo deck has been very, very popular in Modern. This is a huge piece of it. A couple weeks ago, as that deck really started to take off, this card spiked. But now it's continuing to spike, which feels a little suspicious to me. This feels like a little bit of market manipulation, more so than maybe I would have said a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, it felt like a normal spike due to the fact that you had a card that became popular in a deck that was showing good results. Now that we're a few weeks away, I feel like it's still going up. It's very suspicious. Now, I will say, even though it has gone up quite a bit this week, it also has gone down quite a bit over the last few days. As a matter of fact, as of yesterday, I think this was a $40 card, so it may be beginning its trend to drop back down. So be careful with this one. I would hold off buying this for at least a week or two and see what happens with the market here. I think this is about to have a pretty big drop. Let's move on to Legacy, and there's not a whole lot new to say about Legacy. Again, reserve list cards have been very hot, and there have been buyouts. There's been huge spikes and then drops, and that trend pretty much continues this week, although it's not quite as volatile as it's been in past weeks. So let's see what's lost value this week. Coming in number 5 is Mirror Universe from Legends. It's down $6.44 to $85.85. This is just normal stabilization here. Number 4, Chains of Mistopheles. Same thing, down $6.59 to $351.50. Number 3 is a revised Volcanic Island. We actually haven't seen a lot of the revised dual lands on these lists for a while. They've all been unlimited, but today we have a Volcanic Island down $7.16 to $327.82. And we also have a revised Tropical Island down 770 to 229.95. Now, you could argue that the 2017 GP schedule may be impacting the market a little bit. The fact that there's only 2 legacy GPs have made a lot of people feel like they're slowly pulling out their support for legacy. But I think the folks that play Legacy for the most part don't really care about Grand Prix support. I think they're going to play Legacy regardless of that. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any impact at all from that announcement long term. And finally, number 1 is Candelabra of Thanos down 22.50 to 499.99. Not too much to say here, just normal stabilization for this card. It swings pretty largely every week, up and then back down. All right, let's go to the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in number 5 is Moat, up $20.13 to $6.49. This was a victim of a buyout. It was dropping back down, but now it's going back up. So keep an eye on this one. I mean, it's a fan favorite. It's unfortunate that it was a target of a buyout. It appears to be at least holding its value pretty steadily around the $600 mark. Coming in number 4 is Drop of Honey, up $22.20 to $149.99. Arabian Nights rares have been very popular recently, and it's not necessarily buyouts, but I think collectors in general are just trying to pick them up. And I do think sometimes old school players are also trying to get copies of some of these cards for their decks. Coming in number 3 is Scrubland, and this one is an unlimited version. It's up $22.40 to $175.99. Number 2 is Nether Void, up $68.22 to $407.50. This has been very, very popular the last few weeks. Again, this is a card that does see play in old school, and it's also another old-time Magic rare that does something that you don't typically see. It has spiked really hard. It does kind of reek of a buyout, so that's potentially part of it as well. But keep an eye on this card. It's gone up a lot the last few weeks, and I have a feeling that it can't maintain this sort of inflation that it's seen so quickly. So I do think it will start to come down at some point. And finally, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Val is up $199.20 to $15.49. For a card that expensive, this is basically normal stabilization. 1 week this will be up $200, next week will be down $200. Just depends on what it's listed at that given week. So having said that, that's the market watch. So standard has been crazy. I can't wait to see where this goes next week. And it's kind of nice that things have settled a little bit, at least in modern and legacy, especially after all the action with the reserve list and Eternal Masters and all that hype that was going on with legacy. It's kind of nice to see it stabilizing a little bit, but it's very exciting also to see standard really starting to heat up and take off. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality content for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.